I want to very briefly go over some of the first attempts in this week to help you have a better idea of what you need to be focusing on in the next set of cases. Um, like I said before, this is going to be difficult for many of you. This is the first time that you're doing this. And so you want to get out of some habits that you have from other classes, and you want to start thinking from a legal reasoning point of view. And that's what this is all about, trying to get you closer to that kind of way of thinking. So kind of just the big picture first, you're going to see a letter grade on Blackboard. And so nobody did all that well, which is, again, it's expected. It does take time. You're going to get better as you keep practicing this. But this first grade gives you an indication of kind of where you're at, what you struggled with. So just for scoring purposes, it's graded on a curve, graded down on a curve, so that the grades are a little bit higher than would be otherwise. So 11 out of 20 is a C plus in this case, a 7 out of 20 is a C minus, and a 6 or less is a D, right? So this is indicating to you kind of where you stand. So if you go back to the rubric, right, you're still struggling with a lot of the problems that the rubric talked about. So you're probably summarizing, you're generalizing, you're not really specifically analyzing. And so you want to make sure that you're remembering the facts of the case, make sure you have the reading right there in front of you and that you're quoting to it, and that you're able to understand it, right? So this is not a thing that you should be looking up on the internet that's really going to steer you in the wrong direction. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of very incomplete summaries of things that are just going to really hurt you if that's the way you go. You really got to try to just focus on your own reading comprehension. Now I'm going to take into consideration, right, after you do this over and over and over again, if you start to show improvement, that's going to boost your grade. So don't be disheartened, don't feel bad, right, if you're struggling at first. The goal here is to get better. The other thing I noticed in a lot of the answers, it doesn't seem like you're taking your time. So don't rush through this. This is a very difficult assignment. So take it just like you were taking an exam. Really take your time, have your notes ready, have the readings ready, really think through your answers and be careful about what you're saying. Okay, in the future, if you get a 13 out of 20, that would be a B, and then anything over a 17 would be an A. If you notice, there's 20 questions, right? So each is a point here. Oh, sorry. One other thing on this is, one of the what should be easy if you take your time and you really think through and you're not looking on the internet for answers. These should be the easy questions. Is what effect did the decision have on unequal social relations? So I'm gonna, in the next one, I'm gonna say this. I don't need you to summarize the case, so please don't do that. But you should understand what the conclusion in the case was. But what I'm wanting you really to do is think about what's the consequence, right? This whole time you've been learning about unequal social relations. And so each case we want to measure, has it maintained the domination? It had no effect, right? It kept things exactly the same, what we call status quo. Did it increase domination or did it decrease domination? So you really should be able to put these pieces together. And so I was a little surprised. I thought this would be a little bit easier for most of you, but most of you struggled with this. So I want you to take your time. I'm going to keep repeating that. Take your time because I think you're not really thinking through. If people who are enslaved win their liberation, then that would have the tendency to decrease, right? Less domination, right? If the Supreme Court rules that somebody of an African descent is not a free citizen, then that would increase domination. And so I want you to think about the consequence of these actions, as this is something you're going to have to do over and over again. Now the big problems here is, again, it's not a summary of the case. So a lot of you were copying and pasting, it looked like, and that's just, it's not going to work in this kind of a class. And what I'm looking for is your own thoughts, right? So really there's only two words that you really had to have in what is the injustice or controversy, that in illegal enslavement. Now there's other ways you could have said that, right? Maybe you need 5 or 6 words to say the same thing. But a lot of you, copied and pasted something and it really didn't have anything to do with the question. So we're looking for the specific injustice, right? What is the thing that is leading to the rights claim? What is the act of domination? What is the thing that's taking away somebody's rights? And then the next question is, what's the rights claim, right? So again, a lot of you summarized, conclusions of the Supreme Court or ruled, held, and none of that has anything to do with this question. This is asking, what's the rights claim? So one student said very clearly, it's liberation. That's the correct answer, right? That's what these people are claiming. They have a right to liberation. It's not the amendment, it's not the law, right? That's not the stuff that it's asking. So really pay attention to the question, right? If it asks you for a law, if you have a question that asks you for a law, you put a law. If it asks you for a constitutional amendment, put a constitutional amendment. But if it asks you what a rights claim is, you're going to have to use language to do that, right? You're not going to be just referring to something else. So please, please, please don't summarize the case and pay attention to what the questions are asking you. The second thing is, you might want to think about just quoting directly from the case if you're struggling with this. So if you don't know how to paraphrase it, then quote exactly to the book, right? And again, that shouldn't be more than a sentence. So these answers shouldn't be long, right? So some of these answers I saw were 2 or 3 paragraphs. That's telling me you're really not thinking about this right. You're doing something strange, or you're not understanding what this is asking you. And so if you need to, right, quote from the case to kind of keep you focused, and then just make sure you're including the page number from the reader. Now the other one is about standpoint, and so the first thing you have to do is define your standpoint. Who are you? So I included 2 answers here where the students are really clear about who they are, right? So someone is referring to themselves as an immigrant and then as a college student. So now I know what their standpoint is. So you can't really answer the question unless you tell me what your standpoint is. So most of you didn't do that. You didn't seem to understand what that question meant. So I'm making it clear here, right? How did the case apply to your own standpoint? What did you learn? So does it apply to you? Are you within that group? Does it matter to you in a very significant sense based on what you know about this class so far? How does it affect you? Does it change your mind about something? What knowledge are you gaining? Obviously the answer should be yes in all these situations. You have to show me how that's happening. Again, this gets you towards critical analysis instead of just repeating things that you find on the internet or just repeating a summary of the reading. I need to get you into critical thinking and thinking deeply. That's how you do analysis. The last part is you need to make a rational, consistent rule. So these aren't great rules, but they're okay. They're not bad. And so, this is people thinking after you read those cases now. So what would you do if you were the Supreme Court? What rule would you come up with so that people's rights weren't being taken away? And that way you'd start to really put this together as one big package. So what I hope that you'd see about this is that there's a common myth in popular culture that there's been progress on race relations, and that's insane, right? It doesn't make any sense because it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, Brown versus Board of Education, some people hold that out to be great progress, but we live in a more segregated school system than we ever have in the history of the United States. And so the Supreme Court, didn't do what people in popular culture say they did. And so now that you've kind of thought about these cases, you're going to start to see that there's a huge gap. Remember, this goes back to that civic education gap. It's not just you, it's not just students, it's Americans, right? They have a magical belief in what they think is going on. Some jokingly say that's because of Disney and television, right? Maybe that's true. Maybe people they believe what they see and they don't really read the cases or the Constitution, so they don't really know. So we're now comparing that to what the judges actually said. That's why you have to read these cases carefully and read them for yourself. You'll find a lot of misinformation on the internet. And so coming together with a consistent rational rule, that's showing me that you're able to process this information and that you're able to put it forward into your critical legal reasoning. And so that's kind of the whole point of this. I'm really building you up and helping you get ready for the final exam. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to keep trying to give you this kind of feedback. Again, and this was pretty consistent among the 7 students that finished the assignment, which is also a problem, right? Only 7 out of 20 something. But again, this is difficult, and so please do take your time and try to get it right the first time. I'd also just remind you, right, that I made a video for you. Watch this again, watch it over and over again, watch this video if you're having any problems. You can also reach out to me and we can try to schedule a meeting, or we can maybe talk about it over email as to how you're struggling. It can't just be a generic email that says, what can I do better, or how can I make this up, right? We need to have a conversation so that you are able to show me what you're struggling with. What parts are you doing well? What parts are you struggling with? And that way I can give you very specific information. Otherwise, it's just going to be general information like I'm giving here, which will help some of you, right? Maybe you just didn't think about it this way and now you're thinking about it differently. And remember, this is about a rubric system. So the grade is important to you. It gives you an indication of how you did. But really what's important for me and our grading policy here is the rubric. Were you able to do these things? These are our learning outcomes that you're expected to do in the Justice Academy as criminal justice majors. And so you need to be able to do this by the end of the semester. So I'm trying to push you and push you and push you to get to this point of view here in the B and the A range. So nobody did that in the first set of cases, but again, that's not uncommon. That this is very difficult at the beginning, and you'll get better at it as you practice. But you now kind of need to refocus and try to really zoom in on critical analysis. And again, just repeat and repeat and repeat. Don't summarize the cases. That's not what this is about. This is your ability to read and analyze those cases. Okay, so if you need anything, please let me know.